ID workers from more than 10,000 to just 290, two sources with the plans say, familiar with the plans. The remaining staff includes employees who specialize in health and humanitarian assistance. The agency is pushing the State Department for less severe cuts and have submitted a much longer list of staff that they deem essential. But reports say most of the contractors have already been fired or furloughed, and that the 290 that will remain are among the more than 5,000 foreign service officers, civil servants, and contractors still employed. Under the plan, just 12 people would be dedicated to serve the continent of Africa, and 8 people for all of Asia. And 600 employees dedicated to Europe will be cut to just 10 people. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said yesterday the actions were not meant to be disruptive, but were, quote, the only way we've been able to get cooperation from USAID. Okay. Meanwhile, unions representing foreign service officers and federal employees at USAID are suing the Trump administration in an effort to stop the dismantling of the agency. The suit is filed against President Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, USAID, the State Department, and the Department of Treasury, and seeks an injunctive relief to stop the effort to close the agency down and restore its system. It goes on to allege the group is responsible for causing a global humanitarian crisis and costing thousands of American jobs, and argues only Congress can dissolve the agency. So, Joe, let's stop right there because there's a lot going on, including Elon Musk's involvement and this process that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said there was no other way to do it. Seems to me there are lawful ways to do this as opposed to how it's happening.
Right. And that's a question. And it's a question for all of the Doge projects, because I think, let me just say it at the outset, as a small government conservative, as somebody who actually helped lead the fight with about a dozen of my classmates, we balanced a budget 4 years in a row, and we did that. It's the only time it's happened in 100 years. Mm-hmm. It's the only time it's happened in a century. We did it 4 years in a row. There's nothing easy about it. There's government waste out there involved, but we did it constitutionally. We did it legally. It's hard. It's just a very difficult thing to do. And so the question is not whether they're going to find waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. Of course, they're going to find waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. And this is something they should do, but they need to do it legally. And they need to do it transparently. There's no transparency here that I can that I can see. I mean, I think there are people inside the White House that I've spoken to that are still sort of guessing and curious exactly about what's happening, and the speed by these changes are taking place with really no organization, with no game plan. It's extraordinarily dangerous. These governmental systems opened up and opened up in a way that will allow China, allow Russia, allow Iran, allow our foreign adversaries to possibly gain access to these systems after layer after layer after layer of security could just be gutted. That's one thing. I want to say another thing, though, and I find it a curious, John Heilman, I find it a curious argument that some Democrats are making, which is, let's not fight about this. You know, it's foreign aid. Foreign aid's not popular. Let's talk about eggs, or let's talk. No, this is a fight that I don't care what polls say right now. If it's a 50-50 split, I still have confidence in the American people that they don't want children to die in Sudan. They don't want them to starve to death in Sudan, and they don't want malaria spreading all over Africa. They don't want these diseases spreading all over the world. They don't want George W. Bush's PEPFAR project, which has saved 25 million lives so far across the world. They don't want those stopped at the end of the day if Democrats will actually explain that to them. And this whole idea that, oh, we don't have the money to provide grain to young children who are starving in Africa or across the world, in Sudan or across the world. I mean, one fighter jet here buys a hell of a lot of life-saving aid and a lot of prevention for diseases that will spread across the globe. And on top of that, as far as the bang for your buck goes, if you look at not only the goodwill that the United States gets out of these programs, but the intel that we gain. Let's just be cynical about this if nobody gives a damn about the morality. The intel that we gain about Al-Qaeda's actions in Africa, ISIS's actions in Africa, what China is doing to try to elbow us out for minerals and precious resources in Africa. If we look at what Russia's constantly trying to do to undermine our position, what Iran's trying to do, man, this is just a great value. It is a great value that we saw after World War II. We see time and time again. Hearts and minds are changed, and the United States power grows exponentially. What is right actually leads to might in many, many ways. This is a strategically smart thing to do moving forward with this program. Cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. But God, don't gut it. And if you're a Democrat, why not defend it?
Well, I think, Joe, I have heard some of the consultants who've made this argument that, Florida is a political loser. I think it's fair to say that if you were to look at polling over the course of the past, not few years, but few decades, that they're not wrong, that foreign aid is traditionally thought of as a liberal humanitarian concern. It's not framed the way you described it. It's not been defended in the way you defend it. And USAID in particular has not been put in that context. That's an argument worth making, maybe. But I understand the kind of reflexive desire of some consultants to say, this is a loser. Donald Trump's going to enjoy this fight. We need to move on to a bigger fight. I am with you on the substance of it. I'm also with you on the politics of it if it's recast in a different way. I think if you're going to try to fight this fight program by program, making the arguments for is this spending or that department or this is the level of cuts, that is also in a lot of cases, the things that Elon Musk and his team are focusing on are things that traditionally have been hard to defend and that have not been obvious winners for Democrats. I think the notion of making an argument about an unelected plutocrat and his group of toadies and henchmen with their zip drives, staging a digital coup in a lot of cases, rolling into agencies with no authorization. You talked about transparency before. I say with no accountability. Yeah, the Doge is acting in a lawless way to to target given programs of all kinds in the dead of night, over weekends, accessing computer systems and making determinations that the Congress hasn't voted on, that no one has authorized, that no one has debated beforehand, that all of these, that argument that Democrats are now starting to glom onto, which is this is a usurpation of the democratic process.
Right.
This is breaking the government. This is a coup in all but without the Kalashnikovs. That those kinds of arguments to fold USAID under that blanket, under that larger argument and sort of say, wait, stop. What's going on here? Who gave you, Elon Musk, the right to shut down anything? You were unelected and you were unconfirmed. You were unvetted. Where does your authority derive? Right. I think Democrats are starting to see that as a powerful political argument. And rather than fighting program by program, you need to fight this larger fight, and you need to fight it right now.
Frank Bohr is writing more about the Doge part of this. And I think the bigger thing politically, Adrian Elrod, is that there's something in this catastrophe for everybody. I don't think you need to focus on just one aspect of it because, listen, Donald Trump taps into this America First attitude. And I've even heard Republicans and those representing the White House saying, you know, there are people suffering from the fires. There are people suffering in North Carolina from, you know, the catastrophes there. Why should that money be spent abroad when we are suffering? Americans want what they can get. And there is a very me first attitude out there that Trump taps into it. So I do think it's important to mention the part and to focus on the fact that we're handing off vital resources, that we're handing off vital secrets and making a void where Russia and China can step in, making our country less safer. Because I do think also Republicans and followers of Donald Trump are very much into national security. And this is not good for our national security.
That's exactly right, Mika. I mean, look, first of all, it should come as no surprise to me that USAID is one of the first programs that or the first agencies that Trump went after for the very reasons that you just laid out, that a lot of Americans are seeing this as, you know, you're taking my taxpayer dollars, you're taking my hard-earned money, and you're focusing on foreign aid as opposed to my own, the
may
needs
not
of my
be
own
necessarily,
life.
you know, exactly true, but that's the equation.
Which is exactly why Democrats, and anybody, by the way, who opposes dismantling USAID, we've got to do a better job of telling the story. To your point, talking about how soft diplomacy, talking about how giving foreign aid to foreign countries is going to actually keep America safer. It's something that we Democrats we got to do a better job of doing that. So, you know, going out there, instead of some of these members of Congress going out and yelling, we will win at a press conference, we actually need these members to go out to their social media channels. We need real everyday people going out to their communities and talking about how these programs actually help keep America safe, how they help American families. That is just the bottom line. Because again, if you're the average American, you're looking at this and saying, I wanted the system to be shaken up. I wanted government bloat to go down. The first place I'm going to go to, or that Trump should go to, is USAID. So we just got to do a better job at telling the story.
You're referring, of course, to Chuck Schumer's news conference earlier this week.
Yes.
A few real-world implications here, cutting USAID, that are collected here. Anti-trafficking work in Latin America has already taken a hit. Clinical trials funded by USAID, medical experiments have been stopped. The New York Times has a great story and a terrible story on this today. Midstream, some people have medical devices still in their bodies because the trials were abruptly stopped. We have damaged the funding. USAID helped fund Ukraine's energy system. That's obviously a boon to Vladimir Putin if that goes away, as well as billions of dollars here for the U.S. economy. The Washington Post reports on how some American farmers would have contracts with USAID. That's now gone away.
Yep.
That's hurting the American pocketbook here at home. And we should also note, of course, that Elon Musk, who's in charge of all this, is the leader in spreading misinformation, disinformation, outright lying on his X account, and that for about, let's say, the condoms in Gaza, for instance. And that's been amplified by right-wing media.